For our first little exploratory lesson, our practice exploratory lesson, we have a spreadsheet here that helps us figure out our monthly budget. This spreadsheet shows us what we'll pay in taxes and allows us to calculate then what our take-home pay will be, and then we can figure out what that works out to monthly. And from there, we would be able to then budget our money to make sure that we're not spending more than we earn each month. So this is an example of using a spreadsheet to solve a problem. And here we haven't solved a specific problem. We haven't solved just my problem of budgeting. This spreadsheet is a more general solution to problem solving. You can also use it to figure out your budget. It's not a solution for all time though, because you'll see here that I only have taxes figured out for someone who lives in the state of Arizona in the year 2024. For a more widespread solution, a solution for all time, we would need to include all the different tax rates throughout different times and different places. But let's go ahead and dig in and see how this spreadsheet works. So the first thing that I need to do is put in a salary. So let's say that we're making $72,000 per year. So in cell B2, I'm putting in $72,000. And then you see there's another space here for additional income. This might be income that a person earns doing things other than their job. They might have some online business or something where they earn some additional income. So let's say they make $3,000 from that. In these first two cells, in cell B2 and in cell B3, we've just inputted numbers. These are values that the user can enter and change and do whatever they want with. But the one underneath it in cell B4 needs to be the total of those two numbers. This is where we need a function. And our two previous cells, B2 and B3, are going to be the arguments that we enter into that function in order to find the total. There's a lot of different ways we can do this. One really simple way, because we're only adding two numbers, is to do equals. And then I can click on B2 to enter it in. It'll automatically enter in. When I click on the cell, you'll see it's entered B2. And then we need to add to it B3. And we can type that too. We don't have to click. You can just type that in. But if we do that, B2 plus B3, it gives us the total, as expected, $75,000. The other way we could do this is with one of the predefined functions. So equals sum will total up the values within a range that we give it. And so we can select B2 and hold our click down and drag. So we kind of click and then drag to select B2 colon B3. So go ahead and practice that on your spreadsheet to make sure you're getting it, but you can also just type it in. And if you close parentheses, you'll see we get the same thing. Right now, this is a good example of something. Google is trying to suggest to me what I might be trying to do in the cells beneath it. A lot of times when you enter in a formula, you actually want that formula to extend down to the cells beneath it. And Google will try to helpfully suggest like, oh, is that what you want to do? And if you click the little checkbox that we see here, that's what it'll do. But I don't want that. I actually want to reject that suggestion because underneath we need to do different things. So we can see already that in our other columns, D through F, the taxes are being automatically calculated. And I want to kind of just go over there and take a look at what's going on. So you can see we've got federal taxes where there's a standard deduction of $14,600. That comes out of your total income and you're only taxed on the remainder after you deduct the standard deduction. And then the spreadsheet figures it out. So if you look in cell F4, you can see it's trying to figure out whether or not a person falls into this tax bracket. If they make more than $0 after the standard deduction, so in other words, if they make more than the standard deduction, then they do. This is a really complicated formula if you take a look at it. It is an ifs function, so it's a nested if function. We're going to learn about those in chapter 2. You're going to learn about these if functions. But it's sort of figuring out if this is true, then we need to total it up this way. If this other situation is true, we need to total it up a different way. But you'll notice in here, we've got words. It says ifs income minus benefits minus retire minus STD/DED, standard deduction, is greater than E5, then do this other stuff. And that's because I've named some of the cells. This is one of the really powerful things you can do in a spreadsheet. And if you go over to data and click on named ranges, it'll pop up here and you can see what those ranges are. And these are things I previously entered in myself. And so benefits, you'll see, is that cell B5. Income is in cell B4. Retirement is in cell B6. And then that standard deduction is in cell F2. And so to name a range, you would just have to add a range. So we can select cell F11 and add this range. And we could call this Fed tax for the total federal taxes. And when we click done, it gets entered in. Then when we do this, when we add this together, you'll see this will work. So I'm going to go ahead and name these other cells, F18. I'm going to name and call it FICA tax. And then in cell F23, I'll select that and add a range, and I'll call that AZ tax. Cool. All right, that's just some fun. Now what we can do is figure out how we're going to model and enter in all of this additional information. So if you work a full-time job with a salary, often you get benefits, and those are deducted from your paycheck before taxes. So this spreadsheet is trying to do this nice general solution where you can have things deducted before taxes, and it'll calculate those taxes appropriately thereafter. So for example, someone might have health insurance with their job that they work at, and part of that health insurance premium they pay each month. And they might pay for dental or other things. And so let's say for this person, they're going to pay $60 per month in benefits. And that gets deducted before taxes. That might be a small amount or a big amount. It doesn't really matter. But $60 is per month. And our salary is in annual terms. And so we can use a spreadsheet as a nice little calculator for us. Instead of trying to do 60 times 12, we can do equals 60 times 12. If we know that monthly value, we can multiply it by 12 to get the annual value here of $720. And the same goes for retirement. A lot of times someone has money that they put into their retirement account, and that goes into the retirement account before the taxes are calculated. You don't pay taxes on that money that goes into like a 401k. But that's usually a percentage of their income. And so someone maybe puts in 7% of their income or their salary. Here, we're not going to put in 7% of our additional income, but we will put in 7% of our salary. And so we could use this calculator to do that too. 0.07 is 7%. And we can multiply that by the value in salary in cell B2. And there, it figures out each year we'll contribute $5,040 into our retirement account. So now the taxes, you'll notice when we type those in, updated automatically. And so now I can put in the total for these taxes. And I know what I need to do is add Fed tax plus those FICA taxes, I name that cell, plus the AZ taxes. If I add F11 plus F18 plus F23 together, then we get our total amount of taxes paid. So on this income of $75,000, where I'm putting some money into retirement and I pay for some benefits before taxes, my total tax burden for the year is going to be $14,122.22. So my take-home pay, what I actually get deposited into my bank account total for the year, is going to be my total income, cell B4, minus what I paid in benefits, because that comes out of my paycheck, minus what I paid for retirement, because that comes out of my paycheck, minus what I pay in taxes. And that leaves me here, now I can say $55,117.78. So out of my initial $75,000, I'm keeping a little over $55,000 per year. So how do I figure out what that is per month? What I'd need to do is, again, a little math. I take the total annual amount and I just divide by 12. And so I see each month I'm going to get $4,600, thereabouts. And from this, now I can devise a budget. What can I pay for rent or for a mortgage? What can I pay for a car, etc.? What's great about a spreadsheet, and when you use cell references like this, notice that like when I'm figuring out my take-home pay, I'm not doing 75,000 minus 720 minus 5,040. What I'm doing is cell B4 minus cell B5 minus cell B6 minus cell B7, because maybe I get a raise. Maybe at the end of the year, my income goes up to $76,000. All I have to do is enter that new number in, and boom, everything updates because I'm referencing the cell rather than inputting the number. And so now all the taxes updated, what I'm putting into my retirement account updated, and so what my take-home pay is updated, and my monthly pay is updated as well. So that $3,000 or $4,000 raise has resulted in, let's see, I have to go back. If I go back to 72,000, I was at almost 4,600. So 76,000 gives me a $200, a little more than a $200 a month increase in what I'm getting after taxes, after retirement account, after benefits, all of that. This is the power of spreadsheets. Spreadsheets let you create a thing that now I can keep into the future. And you can keep this spreadsheet into the future if you want. And so long as you update it with new tax rates and tax brackets and things like that, this will work. This will continue to calculate for you what you would take home monthly. And you can expand on this to then further input your budget and see what you might have left over. So what I really want you to take away from this is the power of using spreadsheets and using these cell references so that when we make changes, when we update a particular number, everything automatically updates. And so we can model something pretty complex like take-home pay. Take-home pay is really complex with benefits and retirement and taxes. But now we've made it super easy. It's super easy to see what's going on. And you can play with this and see crazy things. Like, what if I got a $500,000 a year job? Now I can see how much money I would take home $311,000. I'd have almost $26,000 a month. Boy, wouldn't that be nice? So you can have fun and dream about it, or figure out, oh my gosh, what if I got a much worse job? How much less would I have? So on and so forth. So have fun with this, play around with it, figure out how spreadsheets work, because in the chapters that come, we are going to get this complex and we're going to dig into functions, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to do a lot with spreadsheets. Let me know if you have any questions.